You are listening to the Spiritual Warrior Coach with Barbara Savin, the podcast for discovering how powerful your wisdom, compassion, and courage is. Get ready to join Barbara and her guests as they explore and offer you advice on how to reclaim your power, your energy, and your authentic self. And now, here's the host of the show, Barbara Savin.
Well, thank you for joining me today, and welcome to the Spiritual Warrior Coach podcast. I am your host, Barbara Savin, and I am here to help you reclaim your power, your energy, and your authentic self. I am a certified clinical and medical hypnotherapist, Reiki master and teacher, energy healing specialist, life coach, and best-selling author of Gentle Energy Touch, The Beginner's Guide to Hands-On Healing. You know, I have been helping my clients for over 35 years, and the older I get, the more wisdom seems to come through. So isn't it time that you believe in yourself? You know, your mind is going to provide you with your greatest challenges in life because it's so very, very powerful. So let's use that mind for positive thinking, creating harmony, balance, peace, love, happiness, and anything else that your heart desires. Because one day the world will tap you on your shoulder and say, this is your time to shine. And speaking about shining, I'm going to bring on my guest, Kate, right now. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Let me tell my listeners a little bit about you. Kate Shipp is a Christ-centered yoga therapist, certified with the International Association of Yoga Therapy, and a 500 ERYT and YACEP with Yoga Alliance. She holds a BS in marketing from Arizona State University and has thousands of hours in training and personal experience in various holistic therapies. And for the past decade, Kate has specialized in seeing clients for mental health and trauma recovery. She uses the teachings of Jesus and the philosophy and practices of yoga, combined with the neuroscience of trauma, to help clients overcome painful pasts, remember their wholeness, and live lives of peace and joy. And Kate's personal recovery from a complex PTSD and her connection with spirit motivate her to serve others in this way. And she believes that through hope, faith, and love, even the most painful sufferings can be overcome. And Kate is also an international best-selling author. And her most recent book, I Am Strong Enough Now, God, Thanks, has reached #1 in multiple categories. Welcome, Kate. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. That's the first time I've heard that whole thing read like that. So that's especially the last part, the international best-selling author. That's exciting.
Yes, you are. Yeah. I actually purchased your book a few days ago and started reading it. And I said, wow, she's gone through a lot of challenges there.
Yes, I absolutely, as I believe all humans have gone through challenges. And yes, I've had my fair share.
Yes, you have. A little more than the fair share, I'd say. So how was growing up? You know, I'm curious, how was growing up in your family? You know,
so I grew up in a very large Sicilian, Italian, Irish, English, Scottish family. So there's a lot of personality.
Yes.
There's a lot of noise. I'm one of 5 kids. I'm the 4th of 5.
Oh.
My parents have been married for 52 years this year. And all of us are married and our own children now as well. And we live throughout different parts of the country, but there was always a lot happening in our household. And there was this combination, and I named this really early on in the book, of an underlying love with inconsistent emotional energy in the home. And so while I will say I knew my parents loved me, there was a lot of emotional abuse and pain due to their unprocessed pain. And so while I could, early on in my own kind of holistic healing journey, when someone would say, "How was your childhood?" I'd be like, "It was great." Right? Like we had all this, there was an abundance of stuff, materialism type stuff. And there was always someone to hang out with or play with, or there was an animal or a human, And as I came into studying more around the teachings of yoga and then really reconnecting with my body, there was this deeper understanding that said maybe things weren't always what you thought they were. And starting to see things in a different way that helped me finally unearth what had caused so much suffering for a lot of years.
Okay. Now, suffering with you and your family, or?
Yeah. So, and I named this in the book early so that people don't feel like there's a what's coming type of thing. So I was sexually abused very young, from 2 to 6 years of age, by my paternal grandfather. And I didn't remember that until I was 35. And so my conscious memory had pushed it away, right? Like I had completely forgotten, but it lived in my subconscious and in my unconscious and would surface in my dreams often. And it would show up as repetitive nightmares, as emotional symptoms that I didn't understand, because as a child, I wasn't taught to speak to or name or understand emotions. And when I started my yoga journey, and it was like the energy started moving through my body, and over time, all of that I hadn't processed yet started surfacing. And it showed up as really heavy complex PTSD symptoms. So people hear PTSD all the time. And PTSD is most often known as there was one event that happened and everything changed after that. Whereas complex PTSD, which is more often named as developmental trauma, is something chronic that happened early on in your life. And it was a consistent, unsafe environment in some way, or long withstanding abuse or suffering. Whereas as a child, there wasn't that consistent, safe place to land. There was always that little underlying fear. And what I came to understand about myself was that the complexity of the trauma wasn't what some people would name as like the big T traumas, the sexual abuse. Later on, as a teenager, I was raped. And then there was an incident of being drugged, which caused a near-death experience. So, but the underlying piece of all of that, Barbara, was this like misunderstood, like, am I really loved? Am I safe in my home? Am I cared for? Are there people there where there's compassionate holding and gentleness and always someone safe to go to? And unfortunately, that always wasn't the case. Yeah.
Did your parents know about that with your grandfather?
They didn't know. Once I remembered, I told them. So once I recalled, I had a visceral, a body-based confirmation of it in May of 2016. And once I really remembered and knew I wasn't making this up, because there is that point where you're like, am I making this up? Because I haven't remembered it for so long.
Right.
But then it was like this stream of consciousness of all the different times that it happened. It's like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, okay. And the memories would keep coming. And so with the support of a therapist at the time, I chose to tell my parents, and thankfully they believed me.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I was blessed in that most difficult conversation, which was over the phone. They live in Illinois. I'm in Arizona. It was, instant. They believed me. And of course they wondered, why didn't you say anything? And my answer to that was, he threatened me. So my grandfather was not a good man.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I wasn't the only one that this happened to. And so they knew, that didn't surprise them when I said that to them. So I do know that I'm very blessed to have had people that believed me when I shared, that understood, that obviously my parents having to then process all of that. I can't even, the depth of their pain that they had to walk through in knowing that this happened to one of their children, if not possibly more. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. So he did that to other family members, or?
Yeah, there was a history of some of that with his own children.
Oh, wow.
And what my therapist told me, which really just broke my heart, was the average pedophile has 16 victims.
Oh, I had no clue of that.
Yeah. And so it made me really understand, because I always asked myself, well, why me?
Why you? Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm one of 5 kids. There were a lot of other cousins, all these things. And what my therapist, because this was something she specialized in, had said, there's a profiling. And they normally go after the child who's less likely to say something,
Afraid.
the one who's more easily manipulated
Mm-hmm.
emotionally in that way. And so and having worked with so many women myself now the past decade, and I tend to work with a lot of sexual trauma survivors, is that same question. Well, why me? What was it about me? And so having to help understand that there was nothing they did that caused that. There's nothing I did, right, that drew that to me or caused that to happen.
Well, and it's important that we find it in our hearts to not forget, but to forgive them so that it can actually set us free.
So there's a piece
Mm-hmm.
in the book that I go into detail on in 2017, as I had started deep trauma recovery work prior to that. My husband and I and my kids and I, we were back in the Chicagoland area where I grew up. And I told my husband, I said, I need to go to the cemetery to where he's buried. And it's time for me to start my forgiveness journey. And he's like, are you sure? Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
And so there was this beautiful unfolding. And I say the beginning of it because for me, in my experience, forgiveness is not a one and done. It's this constant choice,
Mm-hmm.
right? To continue to move through the many facets of these emotions that come from these hard experiences and forgive. And I remember saying over his grave, right, I forgive you so I can be free and so your soul can heal. I didn't want to carry that anymore.
No, it's a very heavy burden to do.
Yeah.
I had to do some forgiveness also. And what I did was, I remember writing a letter, quite many pages, and going to the party store and buying a whole bunch of helium balloons. Now, mind you, this was like 20 years ago when I lived back east in Brooklyn, and went to the park. And I said, all right, God, I have to surrender this. I have to allow myself to let this go and to free myself so that I can be who I'm meant to be. And I remember sitting in the park and reading the letter. I mean, of course, nobody was around, and crying hysterically. And then I actually attached the letter to all the balloons. And I said, God, angels, archangels, my higher self, everybody, I am now surrendering this and I'm allowing myself to let it go, because by forgiving whom hurt me, I'm now allowing myself to be free. And I remember letting the balloons go and watching it as they just kept on going up to the sky. And it was such an incredible relief that I finally, after all the years of holding the burden, I was free.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a beautiful ceremony. I think of that as ceremony.
Yeah, I made it. And people actually came over to me to ask me if I was okay. And I said, I've never been more okay in my life.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And it was very, probably it was one of the most healing things I've ever done for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was to finally forgive.
I think it's such an important piece of a healing journey. I know there's many different beliefs around that, but I believe in the power of forgiveness. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So so with all this happening, is this how you found your way to do your work?
No. So what's really fascinating about it is, and that's what's so amazing, is I think God led me to the work I was doing as part of my own healing to prepare me for what was coming.
Okay.
from a place of, I had to go through some of my own training and healing, and then was serving and helping others. And then it was like, you can't go any further until you deal with this. That's kind of the
Yes.
way I look at it. And so no, in 2006, I had my son. I was 25. And afterwards, I had postpartum depression. I didn't know I had postpartum depression because I had never experienced that before. And my husband gave me a gift certificate to a yoga studio, and he's like, you need a hobby. Like, you need something to go like de-stress. Really, he was like, you need to de-stress. And as someone who was more of like, I'll go running and I'd go to the gym and that was my workout, I was like, oh, yoga won't be so hard. And I just remember after that first yoga class, two things. One, I remember my physical body hurting in ways. I was like, how? I didn't even know I had muscles there. And the second, I remember thinking when I was laying in there at the end of the first class, just this is the embodiment piece of so much spiritual teachings that I'd had over my life. So when I was 12 and a shaman came into my family's life to help my dad heal, our world shifted from very Catholic upbringing into this metaphysical, I'll say metaphysical with a Catholic underlay. So it was a really interesting home environment. And then a lot of Native American throughout blended into all of that. And so I learned from 12 years of age about chakras and energy medicine and homeopathy and spirits and meditation and channeling and all these amazing things. And so when I went to yoga and I didn't know any of the poses, it was like the poses were some of the last things I learned. And I understood finally that connection to the body piece. And from one class in, it was like, that I need this. And it became my like safe haven, my mat, my yoga practice became that space to connect with God and to be in a healthier relationship with my body. And then I chose to go through a huge teacher training program, another huge master's level yoga therapy program. Like yourself, I am a Reiki master teacher in 2 different lineages of Reiki, and all of these different holistic modalities, and so many. And when I was working, my background's in marketing, and I was working in medical marketing for a dermatology practice out of Chicago, and I would travel back and forth. And I had 2 young kids, and eventually that just wasn't working for our family and schedule. And so when that job ended, I said to my husband, like, I really want to do yoga teacher training. It's time. And he agreed because I had been postponing it for a long time. And as soon as I started in the training and understanding depth of what yoga really is, I knew that was part of my life path. And I just indulged in as much training and learning as I could because it fed my soul on a level that I hadn't had before. And I remember being in a yoga nidra training, which is a guided meditation practice. And I was really drawn to working with women who had postpartum depression and PTSD. Now, at that time, I didn't know I had PTSD. And that's what I think is interesting is I had been living with these symptoms for 30 years and had no idea that I was living with them because it was my normal. So if someone's anxious and they don't know what life is like without anxiety, they don't know they're anxious. They just think that's normal. Yeah. And so it became this beautiful journey of I co-owned a yoga studio for 5 years. I started a private practice out of there and it flourished. And then as in the midst of it flourishing at its, like I was in this place of expansion, all of this unprocessed pain from my past started surfacing at one time. And I think of that as like, okay, God's saying, Kate, there's more for you to do here and there's more for you to serve, but you got to clear this out first.
Clear this out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as healers, we have to reach inside and face those fears and insecurities and things that have happened to us in order for us to be better at helping clients and understanding at a different level.
Yes.
So I know that you call your therapy Christ-centered trauma therapy. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So as I've worked through the years as a yoga therapist, I just naturally was working with mostly women, but
Mhm.
I've worked with kids as young as 7 and women as old as in their 80s. And there's always a trauma component. And where I look at trauma, I define that as unprocessed emotional experiences that reside as stuck energy in our nervous system. So not the event itself, but the unprocessed emotions because of that event
Mhm.
that keep bringing us back into that energy. And in 2016, when I was at the worst of the worst, suicidal ideations, thinking of taking my own life, and just in the darkest of dark that I've ever been, got on my knees and just screaming at Jesus, screaming. So having grown up Catholic, there was this understanding of God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, the Trinity, and Mother Mary. And there was all this really confusing messaging around that.
Mhm.
And, but there was something in my heart that always really connected with Jesus. And so I remember just being on the ground screaming, like, I can't do this on my own anymore. And like, I surrender. And there was just this constant surrendering. And, I laugh because people are like, well, was there like this big thing that happened? I'm like, no, otherwise, right? Life would have been very different. That was not like the sky opened and everything changed, right? What
Mhm.
happened was there was this sense of peacefulness, right? There was something that I was able to re-embody. I wasn't so dissociative. And God continually met me on this journey. And I use the word Christ-centered because it aligns with the teachings of Christ, the teachings of love. It's not religious, it's not dogmatic. You don't have to be a Christian believer to do this work. What you do need is to understand that within you is the light of love, this light of Christ that lives in all of us.
Mhm.
And when we connect to and awaken that light, right, we're able to see where we've aligned our life with the lies versus what I'll say truths. And so in the work in this Christ-centered trauma recovery, I use the teachings of Christ. I use the listing of who God says you are, which is so beautiful because I think if people really started looking at who am I in the eyes of love
Mhm.
versus who I think I am based on what other people have said.
Exactly.
Right there is such a paradigm shift in our consciousness.
Yeah. I always say to people that say things to you, don't take that in because that's not who you are.
Mhm.
You need to reach inside and
Yeah.
figure out who exactly are you.
Yeah. And as a
Excuse me.
child,
Yeah.
when the people that you, what I say, put on the God pedestal, right? Like parents and caregivers and important people in your life, you tend to play that God role and you believe what they say is true because you don't know any different. And it's a coping, right? It's a way to kind of get through maybe the day to day or some hard moments. But then at some point, I think we're met with the gift of now we have to really look at that programming and recognize that it wasn't true.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important, especially, when you're raising children, to make sure that what you say to them is so positive. Because then, if it's a negative thought, or negative word that comes out of your mouth, it's like planting that little seed in here. And then over time, that seed begins to sprout. And then that child thinks that, yes, they're stupid, they're fat, they're ugly, they're this, they're that. And so we need to be so careful with the words that we say.
I 100% agree. And
Yeah.
as a mother, my kids are 15 and 12, and the early years of their life, I wasn't healthy. I wasn't well. And so we've done a lot of repair work as a family
Okay.
and me with them, and recognizing that the unprocessed pain from my past was projected onto them at very young age. And thankfully, I'm well now to be able to do that repair when they're young enough that, yes, some of those seeds are already there. And we're having to take the seed out. And what
Yes.
I've been saying a lot lately is we have to nurture and repair the soil that the seed was
Yes.
planted in,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the soil was unhealthy.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've been through all this in like just recently.
Yeah. And so I started deep trauma therapy for myself in 2016, and I went weekly for 5 years, and then I still go as needed. And there's a lot, I have a slide of all the different modalities that I used to help myself on this journey of recovery, because I believe it's the right practice at the right time. And there's not only one right way for someone. And that part of this walk of self-love is learning what do you need at this time and seeking that next right practitioner or support. And then I think for many, there are a few things that work really, really well, and doing those consistently is important. And, you know, my husband and I went to therapy. He went to his therapy. My kids went. I mean, it's just been this beautiful unfolding of healing for all of us, and some of us still in it because of just the way life presents and activates something that's unprocessed. And then we do the work to move through it in a healthier way.
I think we are always healing and always shedding.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing process.
And I think to myself, gosh, you know, when I look at my kids, and my son's 15 and a sophomore in high school, and I just think of the pain I had been burdening at 15 that no one even knew. Right. And I think of, wow, if I had had some of these skills and tools, how could that have been different? I have such a heart for teens, because I think that if they had certain skills and emotional regulation techniques and understanding their energy, then the world that they live in, you know, for themselves would be so different. It just hurts my heart how much kids and teens are hurting right now.
A lot of my clients happen to be teenagers, and they're very metaphysical. And unfortunately, some of the parents feel to bring them to a psychiatrist or you know, and then the child knows they do not want to take medication. Yeah. Because what they're feeling is real. But unfortunately, some of the parents do not understand. And then, of course, then they bring them to me, and then I make sure that that mother or father, they understand what this child is going through. Because I know for myself, growing up, you know, it was always weird, or you were a witch, or it was voodoo, or whatever it was. But I saw and heard and can speak to spirits. So I knew what was going on. And it's not that they're, you know, psychotic or something like that. They are really feeling the spiritual realm, and it is real. It is real. And so, yeah, I feel we should teach them this. And thank God there are people like yourself that are able to take that teenager and have them understand you are not crazy. This is true. You are seeing and feeling and hearing all this.
Yeah. And my kids I mean, like any other child from a very young age, they are really open, right? Because they're so closely connected until we teach them otherwise. Yeah. And if they stay open and connected, then giving them the tools to manage that is really important. But I completely agree with you. What you're saying is, if the parents aren't of understanding, and they don't believe, or they don't know how to manage that, then yes, there's definitely that tendency to go towards more of a Western medicine approach. And I'll say has its place. But I also understand that the teens that I've worked with, their suffering often is because they don't feel seen, heard, and understood. They feel like something's wrong with them. And I get that. Yeah. You know, I remember that feeling. I was the child that could see and talk with spirits. And then after my near-death experience, it's like, all right, which is which here? Which is a human and which is a spirit? Because I didn't know. It was both were the same. And then having to learn to navigate that was really interesting as well.
Yeah. So how do you actually use all of your healing methods, you know, helping your clients?
So it really depends on meeting them where they are. So clients that come to me for more spiritual or intuitive work, you know, we always start with breath in the body, just to keep them anchored in this present moment awareness, and to help them understand that they don't have to leave themselves to experience this great energy that's alive in them. Because I find that a lot of people when I was overseeing a yoga education program at a holistic healing arts college for a while, and amazing school, amazing people. And a lot of the students would come there highly dissociative and really wanting to understand themselves from a place of, why do I see this? Why do I hear this? How, but it was all about this more etheric or outside of themselves energy instead of what's happening within them. And so I have found over the years that it's so important to teach people about how to be in communion with their body and with their breath before they start exploring some of these other energy modalities and experiences. And so some clients will come to me for that. Oftentimes people are referred to me for trauma recovery and mental health. And then I just, through the intake, I meet them where they are. What is it? What are their goals? What are their sufferings? And what is the best modality to work with? So, from energy medicine techniques, from Reiki, yoga, breath work, prayer, devotion, emotion code work, dowsing, shamanic work. I mean, there's all of these many tools, right, to help someone find what allows them to reconnect to that authentic self.
It's speaking about prayers. I had given some prayers to a teenager that saw me a few days ago to help clear her space in her room. And she was having challenges sleeping at night. And of course, she needed an energy clearing from other situations. But a few days later, she called me and she said, oh, I wrote the prayers and put them under the four corners of my mattress and in my room. And I for the first time, I feel safe. I feel protected. So and yet she would never have thought that prayers can help with that feeling. And I feel a lot of people, they just don't, they do not understand that there's so much more out there that can help them heal on so many different levels.
Yeah, I get the feedback a lot that I call it church trauma, where there are so many people that due to their upbringing in religion, they have disconnected from a relationship with spirit, and whatever they call it, I say God, I'll say Jesus, I'll say Holy Spirit, I'll say spirit. A lot of my clients will use the word universe, they'll use the word source, whatever helps someone tap into that for themselves. I'm okay with in saying it and naming that. But I found that the word prayer for many people that I've worked with over the years was a triggering word because they associated prayer with religion.
Yes.
And so we have to unwind that a little bit to understand, how everything we're speaking is a prayer. I love Carolyn Mace's work around like the words we use are, speaking life or cursing, right? And prayer, and that our breath is a prayer. And so when we can find combinations of words and sentences that bring safety, I mean, wow, what a statement for a teenager to say, I finally feel safe. What a gift.
And the thing is, like, I'll mention to my people that I'll use the word God without religion associated with it. My grandma and great grandma would always use the word God. And that's what I knew. And now, I'm Jewish, but yet they would always speak about archangels and angels. And so I grew up with that. And I know it's more of the, Christian, Catholic religion than it is Jewish, but I would see them. And so I knew in my heart, these things were real, and it wasn't about any religion associated with the word God or archangels or angels.
Yeah,
so
it's true. And, my children used to talk about the things they see. My daughter's 12. She still sees angels regularly and other beings as well. And it's helping navigate and normalize and understand that there's some that will understand and some that won't. And, I remember even when I went into the hospital as part of my healing, and some of my family was like, be careful what you tell them. They might like really think you're nuts. And,
I know.
And I was like, all right, well, when I got in there and went through that whole really, really impactful experience for myself, it was this understanding that we're not unique in our suffering. We just aren't. and that the way we come to find our healing is such a personal, special journey.
Mm-hmm.
And to get to walk with someone in that, I think, is one of the greatest gifts.
Yes. I know for myself, I've seen with many of the healings, Jesus has come to me and Mother Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the most unbelievable feeling ever to have to just open my eyes and there they are right in front of me.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful to experience that.
Yes.
And
I've had that happen for many and they're not of the faith, if you will say, right? They're not. But they're like, why do I see Mother Mary and I see Jesus? And I'm like, well, they're always with me, but they're showing up for you. And so what does that mean to you? And I always invite them to inquire, what does that mean to you? Aside from what you might have been told about them, what is that presence? How are you experiencing it? What does that mean to you? Right. And it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
I've never had someone say, Jesus and Mother Mary are showing up and I'm scared of them. I've never had someone say that it felt bad.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that that's what's so beautiful is when we are open to love and residing as love, remembering we are love, we will have more of those experiences.
And they're beautiful. I mean, I will say only one time that I was a little, not afraid, but like taken when Archangel Michael stepped into the room, and he stepped into the room, not small, he stepped into the room pretty big. And I was actually, a little taken by it because I've never seen them in such huge, forms. And I did apologize. I did say, oh, I'm so sorry, but I was a little startled there. But now, when they step in, it is, again, like you used the word beautiful. It's a beautiful and amazing, feeling just to know that they're there with us.
Yes.
And that,
I had to start understanding what some of these energies were because they started coming in as like little sparkles of light.
Yes.
And so I'll see little sparkle of blue or gold or pink or white or purple. And I'm like, what does this mean? And then having to, and it was almost like fireworks. And and thankfully I knew enough to know that there wasn't something wrong with my eyes or neurologically. It was like, these are how some of these beings will show up. And for other people that I know, it's much like you're sharing is this beautiful, big presence, whether it's a felt sense or you see it. And so I think it shows up differently for everybody. And to learn how that presents, I think for each person is important in their spiritual walk.
Right. And that, excuse me, and not to be afraid of it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And to know they're there to help you, to help you see what it is you need to heal or feel or whatever the situation may be. They're there to help us.
And in that, in the work that I do with people, and we set the container of love right through this energy of Christ, I let them know that when we're embodying that light and when we're setting the energy of that light, only love is able to show up and come in. So there doesn't need to be this fear.
Right. Exactly. So that, I was getting back to your book, which is absolutely amazing. I was reading the part where you actually somewhat died and then came back and that you were just left to die. Can you, I could not comprehend why they did that to you, but can you share that?
There was, there's so much every moment of that experience from what I recall and then have recalled over all these years. That was one of the ones I had to really wrestle with was why would they have just left me?
Just left you.
Why this guy that I'd been dating for a year and a half at that point, and why didn't he call the ambulance right away? Why didn't, and once I had some further understanding of who I was with and the house that I was in, and this came through the police officers that came to my hospital room after I woke back up, and things my dad had shared, was that my best understanding of why they left me there was because they were part of a really big drug ring and I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so the house that I was at, and aside from my boyfriend at the time, the people I were with, I didn't know. So, I name in the book how many ways I think God was saying, don't do this, don't go there. And I ignored all of those intuitive nudges that were really trying to protect me. And so having been left in an epileptic coma type state for over 13 hours before they even called the ambulance, I was moments away from death. And then in the hospital, I did die. So in the book, I tell that twice time of death was called and recorded of my body. And because of the blessing of having various healers in my life, shamans, other people that did other medicine work, and then I believe it was very God ordained that the doctor that was working on me in the hospital had said to my dad, like, my grandmother was a Chinese medicine woman and she knew of these ancient ways beyond my understanding. And he said, your daughter is dead. Let me remind you of that. And yes, you can bring in whomever you want to work over her, but please, just know this. And so that was when my dad and then our shaman Kent had started working over my dead body in the hospital. And there were healers all over the world that Kent had called to go into ceremony. And this beautiful experience that I had. And what was so amazing to me about my memory recollection, and I can close my eyes and I'm there. It's such a beautiful place. But when I was sharing it with my dad, that he had seen the same thing. And that where he was doing ceremony over my body and where Kent and he were in this shamanic journey that was happening, he had said, like, do you know where you are? And I'm like, no, Dad, it was this beautiful golden temple. And over so many years, I would have these experiences that would take me back there, and choosing to figure out, where was this? Like, what is this place? And he would talk about, how his memory of it and how when he was there in ceremony, what was happening. And so what was amazing about that was what I thought, because I'm imagining that many people have had these type of near-death experiences, that sometimes you're like, all right, am I making this up? Right. And it's like, no, this was as real as my skin is now. And the memory of it and the beauty of it and the understanding and this deep understanding that there's no hell. There's only love on the other side. Right. And based upon the experiences we've walked through in this life, that we have soul review and we have a deeper understanding of why we had to go through the things that we had to go through. And, I can't even imagine, and having talked with my parents, and my younger sister was at the hospital too, of that pain of hearing them say, your daughter is dead.
Dead. Yeah. Now, did you see yourself?
I saw myself over the hospital bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, I don't want to go back in there. Like, this human journey is so painful. It's full of suffering. I don't want to go back in there. And after I saw myself over the hospital bed, that's when I remember being in this beautiful temple. And there was like floor to ceiling bookshelves, and the walls were lined with rubies and sapphires and emeralds and amethysts and just gold. It was in this mahogany table and an altar of books. And it was amazing, absolutely amazing. And the people, the beings that were there. And then at that point in my life, Jesus was very important to me, even though I didn't have a religious relationship with him. But I wouldn't talk about Mother Mary, because the grandfather that abused me, part of his whole thing was he would have us sit in his lap and do the rosary with him. And so I became very afraid of Mother Mary. But she represented herself as white buffalo calf woman from the Native American traditions, as this bringer of peace and of light. And so she showed up in between realms in that way. But as I would come to understand over time, then she would introduce herself as Divine Mother and eventually reintroduce herself as Mother Mary. And in the book, I give that timeline of it. And, she was the one that made that proclamation over everyone in between worlds and said, she's not done yet. And asked me, like, are you willing to go back? Like there's more that you need to do. You're not done yet. And I remember her just saying, she's not done yet. And I said, okay. Like, that was all I said. Okay. And then I remember I get this visceral feeling on my sternum of her pressing on my heart. And then this was the second time I came back to life. My dad said that Kent was using his pendulum over my solar plexus, and my dad was holding one hand of mine, and my right hand came up and grabbed Kent's pendulum. And that's how I kind of came back. I wasn't awake yet, but that was when my heart started again, was after she touched my heart. And then I grabbed his pendulum. And I wouldn't wake up until hours later. They had told my parents after that to pretty much expect the worst. Would I make it through the night? They weren't sure. Would I be a vegetable? Would I have brain trauma? All these things. And thankfully, none of that happened.
None of it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. It was miraculous. And doctors are like, you shouldn't be here. You're a walking miracle.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't believe in the should. God had a plan.
Yeah. Well,
I said yes.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay. Like,
yeah. On to the next.
What do we, and there's always more question that I have around that time, and just feel really blessed to have been given that second chance.
That second chance.
Or third chance, I guess I could say.
Well, yeah, it actually was a third chance. Yeah, I also had near death.
Okay.
And it's a different feeling. It's you can feel the love and the peace and the calm,
Mm-hmm.
and with myself, my grandma was at the end of the tunnel. And as I was about to touch her hand, she looked at me and she said, oh, no, and pushed me back out. So
Wow.
it's a different feeling. And then you truly know that there is something else when we do leave.
Yeah, absolutely. And being 18 when that happened, I don't know, how old were you when that happened?
I was about, I was married. I was about 35.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. And I was 18 at this near death piece. And I just remember, and I wrote this in the book.
Oh, you just
like yourself, like myself then, who could help me navigate that experience, because it was quite scary, I'll be honest, at first. And then having to realize that when you're walking in both worlds, that you got to learn different skills and tools and have the right support to do this journey in a different way now.
Well, that's it. So do you feel that your relationship with God and Jesus actually changed you and helped you with your journey now?
I do, absolutely. I feel like my anchor is in Christ always. And I always feel Jesus and Mother Mary with me, right side, left side. And I sense them, I see them, I feel them. Archangels are a big part of my journey, and angels and spirit guides. And I think for myself, it's that connection to Jesus is what helped me save myself from that dark experience. And the way that he has just continually showed up in my life as friend, as savior. I will use the word Lord, because that's who I ascribe to. And this understanding of the consciousness of Christ as that consciousness of love that we all have access to, that we all are as an embodiment of love.
Oh, without a doubt. So is that what actually helped you write your book?
It definitely helped me write my book. Yeah, this book had many variations before I chose to write it as I did. It actually started in January 2020. I went to Sedona. I live only about an hour and a half from there, and just put myself in a hotel for a few days to start the writing journey of what is now this book. And there'll be many more. And because it was like, I needed the memoir piece first to help give context and understanding. But there were times, even in the hotel room, where lights were flickering, light bulbs were blowing out, and I was laughing because I was like, all right, do you not want me to write that part?
Yeah, right.
Validating that I'm writing that part. What is this about? And, having to really discern what to include, what not to include, and helping myself to feel expressed in this journey, this walk, and learning that for majority of my life, I had lived my life in what I'll say, believing the traumas, the lies, the shame, instead of what you even talked about in your beautiful opening on this today, of the positive thinking, the mindset that we're in, and how that plays such a critical role in what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about life, and what we're here for.
Yeah. So do you feel that you writing your book has actually helped you heal and let go of all this?
I think it has helped me heal and let go in a way that I didn't know I still needed. And people had said, like, when you write, there's a cathartic experience that happens different than processing an EMDR or other types of holistic therapies that I used for myself.
Mhm.
They get that now, because especially in the editing process where I had to read my own writing over and over and over again, I would cry every time. And, reading your own words on paper about your experience and the healing that comes through that is amazing.
It truly is, and it helps us know that we've overcome it and we've healed.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're not in that anymore.
Well, you've had a lot of I feel in my heart that when all these things happen to us, that there is a reason we need to go through some of this in order to help ourselves heal, and then, like yourself, to help others heal.
Yeah. And I think the beauty is being able to find the purpose in the pain,
Mhm.
and being able to know that we get to choose what we do with it now.
Yes.
And the gift of being able to serve others to help them walk that journey, so there isn't this despair and hopelessness. I think hope is such a critical energy to be able to keep moving forward, and to allow ourselves that gift. And I love being able to share that with others and to walk with people on that journey.
Well, it's a beautiful book. I can't wait to read the entire book. I've read a few chapters of it, and I was just amazed at some of your writings.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting that the book's
yeah.
had the receptivity that it's had,
Mhm.
and that I surrendered it to God. I'm like, God, do with this what you want. Right? This is all for you.
Yeah.
And the joy of getting to help people in that way, where maybe someone won't reach out to go see a therapist or for individual sessions or to come to see someone like yourself or me, but maybe they'll read a book.
Well, that's it. And
Right?
books are
Yeah.
healing. So where can my listeners get a hold of you? And
So my website is kateshipp.com.
oh, you have little babies in the back.
My dogs are in the other room. They just started barking. I'm so
no,
sorry.
No, I'm so used to that, believe me.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
So kateshipp.com is my website. They can find me on Facebook or Instagram at kateshipp333. Is that, and then the book is available on Amazon, Kindle, or paperback. It's I Am Strong Enough Now, God Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Right. For everything. I mean,
Yes.
it's, we need to act. I mean, I always say when I open my eyes in the morning, thank you, God, for everything.
That's the first thing I say. I'm like, thank you, God, for the gift of this day. I
Yes.
programmed that to be my very first thought.
Oh yeah. My eyes open, I can breathe, I can get out of bed. We're good to go now.
And I think there's something, when we've been through so much pain, our capacity to appreciate the ordinary, right, as something beautiful increases.
So one more time, where can they get a hold of you and your book?
Thanks. Kate Shipp, KATESHIPP. I say like pumpkin, otherwise it gets misinterpreted. kateshipp.com, and then you can get the book on Amazon.
Okay. Yes, please buy that book. Let me tell you, it's an eye opener, and it's a beautiful book. It's a really good book to read. And I'm not just saying that, trust me. It's really good. I cannot wait to finish it. So, and that's what I'll probably be doing over the weekend.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara.
So, Kate, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on the podcast.
I'm so grateful. I've enjoyed this. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you to my listeners for listening. And I hope that you heard what you needed to hear. And visit me at motivateyourlife.net. And please subscribe to this YouTube channel, the Spiritual Warrior Coach Podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio. We're international also. And for those of you that are maybe interested in learning energy healing, check out my book, Gentle Energy Touch, The Beginner's Guide to Hands-on Healing. So again, thank you so much, Kate, for this beautiful interview. And I'm so happy I found you. And I found you through your book.
We have found each other. Yes. Thank you. And thank you to all who are listening.
And have a beautiful weekend to everybody, filled with love and with light. Love, Barbara.